When we talk about saving the Amazon, we usually think of a modern fight against deforestation. But what if the real story is much, much older? Today, we're diving into a worldview that was around long before the first chainsaw ever roared to life.
And that question right there is the heart of it. For the traditional peoples of Latin America, protecting the forest isn't just a reaction to a crisis. It's an active, positive choice for a way of life, an ancient ideology that sees humanity and nature as completely, totally intertwined.
Okay, so what do we actually mean when we say the ideology of the standing forest? Let's break down this core concept.
It really comes down to two powerful parts. On one hand, you've got objective dependence. That's just the straightforward, practical reality that these communities absolutely need the forest for their food, their shelter, their survival. But then, and this is key, you have subjective spirituality, a deep, sacred connection that sees the forest as a living, spiritual being. It's this combination of the practical and the profound that makes this whole worldview so incredibly powerful.
Now, to really wrap our heads around this, we've got to understand a super important distinction. There's preservationism, which is often the view you might get from well-meaning folks from a distance. The idea that to save nature, you have to fence it off and keep people out. But conservationism, the worldview of the people who actually live there, says the complete opposite. It says that the humans who live in and depend on an ecosystem can be its greatest protectors. They aren't the problem to be solved, they are the solution.
So to see what this looks like in the real world, let's dive into our first story. We're heading deep into the spiritual heart of this ideology with the Yanomami people of the Amazon.
This quote from the Yanomami shaman, Davi Kopenawa, this isn't just poetry. For his people, the forest is a conscious, living thing. He's not just describing deforestation, he's describing the murder of a god and the absolute catastrophe that would follow.
And get this is where it gets really fascinating. Kopenawa's vision of a burnt-out, empty land isn't just some abstract spiritual warning. It lines up almost perfectly with the scientific theory of savannization, where scientists predict that massive deforestation could cause the entire Amazon rainforest to just collapse into a dry savanna. So you have two totally different ways of understanding the world, one ancient and spiritual, the other modern and scientific, and they both arrive at the exact same terrifying conclusion.
So what this all comes down to is this incredible, immense sense of responsibility. The Yanomami believe their shamans are in constant communication with forest spirits, the xapiri, and through that bond, they believe they are literally holding up the sky for all of us. So for them, fighting for the forest isn't just about their own survival. It's about preventing a global apocalypse.
Okay, so we've seen the spiritual side, but now let's pivot to the political. Because this ideology of the standing forest is also a raw fight for land, for rights, and for power. And there's no better example of that than the life of rubber tapper Chico Mendes.
Chico Mendes' life was basically one long confrontation. He organized his fellow rubber tappers, the Seringueiros, because their entire livelihood depended on the forest staying alive. Their most famous tactic was the enhabit, which is basically a standoff. Entire communities would peacefully stand right in front of the bulldozers and chainsaws. This was never just about trees. It was a struggle over who gets to control the land. His fight got global attention, but in the end, it cost him his life. And this quote, spoken right before he was murdered, it's just so devastatingly human. He wasn't some martyr looking for a blaze of glory. He was a man who wanted to live. He was fighting for his community's right to a future and for the forest that made that future even possible. Our last story today really ties all of this together. The spiritual, the political, and the deeply, deeply personal. And it comes from the Babassu coconut breakers of Maranhão. Just listen to those words from Donna Maria Celsa. She boils down this entire massive conflict into one single image, the wire fence. That fence represents this completely alien concept of private property crashing into their world, suddenly making their traditional way of life illegal. It literally cut them off from the Babassu palm forests they had relied on for generations. And this academic quote really puts a name to what Donna Maria is feeling. For the coconut breakers, it's not like there's the community over here and the forest over there. No, their community is the forest. The forest is their community. You just can't pull them apart. So here's the bottom line. When the coconut breakers fight for access to those palms, they aren't just fighting for a paycheck. They are fighting for who they are. Their culture, their social bonds, their entire identity is woven into that forest. To kill the forest is to kill them. It's really that simple and that profound.
So, after hearing all these stories, the Yanomami, Chico Mendes, the coconut breakers. What can this ideology of the standing forest really teach us? Especially right now, as we're all facing this massive global climate crisis.
Well, for one, it teaches us that traditional peoples aren't just helpless victims or objects of our policies. They are active subjects, people with their own powerful ideas and solutions. It shows us that fighting for the environment is inseparable from fighting for human rights, for culture, for a place to call home. And maybe the biggest lesson of all, it completely challenges that old Western idea of a hard line between people and nature. It shows us that true, lasting conservation has to see humans as part of the ecosystem, not as some separate intruder.
And that leaves us with one final, pretty heavy thought. We spend billions, I mean billions of dollars, searching for these high-tech, complex political fixes for our environmental crises. But what if some of the most profound solutions have been right there in front of us the whole time, in the worldviews of the very people who know these forests best? It makes you wonder, right? Whose wisdom have we been taught to ignore? And what could happen if we finally started to listen?